Hey everyone, Rotoworld's Josh Norris here with the rest of the Rotoworld football crew. We have John Daigle, Jesse Pantusco, Nick Minzio, and Patrick Doherty. And guys, it's time to help out all the viewers, all the listeners, all the readers out there, because everyone wants some type of plan heading into their draft. So maybe we can give them some draft strategies so they can win their fantasy draft. Nick Minzio, start us off.
Yeah, I know this isn't an option in every league on every site, but sites where you can do this, where I've drafted before, is if I don't have to draft a kicker and a defense, like if the computer doesn't make me take one at the end of the drafts, I'm using those spots on flyer-worthy running backs like Malcolm Brown, Kalen Ballage, Reichel Armstead.
Like those handcuffs.
Those handcuffs, yeah. Those are behind guys that are injured or tend to get injured. So I'm just going to wait till week one and pick up my kicker and defense then, because those don't really matter at this time of year. Like, my strategy for defense is I'm just going to pick a home favorite streamer that is facing a team that throws the ball a lot, because I want sacks and interceptions.
And it's so rarely that you're going to like draft the Jaguars in the second to last round and have them for the entire season, right? Like you want to play the matchups because you read the content, you come up with the best matchups. And what's interesting is, especially Nick, like if you're drafting, mid-August and you have to basically wait an entire month for week one to kick off, injuries happen during that time. Like if you had taken James Conner during that time last year or situations, then you have a bona fide RB1 in your roster at a much, much discounted price.
Exactly.
Makes a ton of sense.
I think DFS has proven this the best strategy, just because like the Chiefs defense we know last year was absolute trash, but you would still play them on a weekly basis when they were in high shootouts, because you want more plays against your defense, which then leads to probability for turnover. Against
an offense that is trying to catch up to you throwing the ball, you want these sacks and interceptions, these turnover opportunities where you can maybe score a touchdown.
Yeah. And then with kickers, again, I mean, you play the matchups there, right? It's just expected point totals for the team that you can find.
Indoor, outdoor,
home favorites, all that good stuff.
Pace of play,
Jesse, give us your draft strategy.
Okay, my draft strategy is to kind of, I think we have a tendency to fall in love with rankings. I mean, rankings, I mean, they move the needle in fantasy. I read them as much as anybody, but they are not gospel. And we go on ADP sites, and I think we have a tendency to maybe, when we're in the middle of a draft, we're like, oh, well, this guy's been going, this is a guy I really like, but I could maybe get him around the turn, or I could get him 2 rounds later, and then like he goes 2 picks later, then you just, you feel like an idiot. So I feel like if you feel really strongly about a guy, forget about ADP and just take him, and don't live with the regret.
So can I like shorten this into a phrase for you, like take players you want to take? Is that basically just the words to live by?
Not overthinking it based on, where you think they should go or where you think you can get them. If it's a guy you are going to regret not getting and he's there, take him.
Like if you want to take Curtis Samuel in round 6, or take Curtis Samuel in round 6.
Like I'm not saying go crazy and take like a kicker like in the 5th round or something, but yeah, within reason. If you come in, because most people come in with a game plan. And you talked about this being a strategy in high stakes leagues too. Like I used to play, fantasy leagues with some of my friends back home, and I followed football, so I felt like I kind of had an edge, and I could be like, oh, they won't know about this guy. I could get him a round or 2 later. But that edge is gone because there's so much content out there. Everybody's so sharp.
ADPs get set from the smartest fantasy football players. So why would you not draft like the smartest fantasy football players? Like those are the people that set your ADPs for August. Like that's why they do it well ahead in advance, because that's when the edges are still happening. So just, you take rankings. It's almost like a life philosophy. Like you look at the rankings, but don't treat them one for one. It's like a blueprint.
And it's even more so like when you see the list based on whatever provider you're drafting from and just diverting off that. Like that's totally fine. You have to go the next person in line on that list. John Daigle, help the people out.
Yeah, so the graphic's going to pop up shortly and say take a tight end first round. But for the record, we know it's Travis Kelce you take first round, not any tight end, because like even when you draft a running back or wide receiver, like you obviously want to win your position weekly. Like that'll give you a good opportunity to win your weekly matchup. Travis Kelce, 9 top 5 finishes last year, 4 top tight end finishes last year positionally, with Patrick Mahomes led his position in air yards, so the distance the ball travels through the air. We want deep targets. That's what Travis Kelce does. Travis Kelce, like drafting him immediately gives you a higher probability to actually win the tight end position every single week, as opposed to waiting in the middle rounds or late rounds for like a meddling guy who's going to finish sometimes outside the top 10, since everything is so touchdown dependent at that point.
Just at Trey Burton next time, okay?
Yes.
It's a difficult spot, though, to be in, if I can put myself in their shoes, honestly. Because when you draft a tight end, let's say at pick 9 in the first round, okay? Or 12 in the first round.
Something inside of you dies.
Right? Well, then you might have to be waiting for either one of those top running backs or top wide receivers all the way back to get back to you. Like, that just gives you an uneasy feeling when you look back at your roster. Does tight end and being that much better than the next one below at that number 2 spot or number 4 spot even, because it kind of just is built in comfort and consistency here we have with Travis Kelce.
So it's honestly not really like the next spot where we are truly asking what you're asking is Travis Kelce, is it that much better than waiting the next round for Zach Ertz or George Kittle? And the answer is yes, because he still gives you the better opportunity to win that position. And then on the comeback, you can still draft guys who are probably going to be like top 5 options, perhaps like Dalvin Cook or a Joe Mixon. Those guys definitely matter. So right now, I personally have Travis Kelce season-long rankings 6th overall, only behind the top 4 backs and David Johnson, who's a top 5 option. So.
And we haven't even mentioned that we have no idea how this Tyreek Hill situation is going to play out. So maybe even more targets.
That's what's funny. Like 150 targets with Tyreek Hill, a team high target share last year. Like if Tyreek Hill falls out for however many games, it directly impacts Travis Kelce. He's the big winner in that, not Sammy Watkins.
Pat, how are you approaching drafts this year?
Well, you know, the most tried and true strategy, of course, is to just let the draft come to you and take the best player available. So I tend to kind of avoid slogan-based drafting.
Words.
Yeah. But ideally, you know, the past few years, and I feel like the same thing this year is, if I'm planning my ideal draft, I like to get a bell cow every down back in the first round because they're more rare than ever. There's been a few guys kind of enter the mix. It's not quite as shallow as it was a few years ago, but still so much shallower than it was 10, 15 years ago. And so I like to get that bell cow in the first round. And the receiver just so deep at the top end, maybe 36 guys who could be viable wide receiver twos. I like to go receiver, receiver, receiver. This especially in PPR. Again, this is not something I adhere to every draft, but like if a draft unfolds perfectly for me, I like coming out with one of those every down backs in the first round and then 3 receivers. And won some titles with that last year, Josh. So
because receiver is so deep, don't you think that makes it important to get a second running back, maybe?
No, because I'd rather have a guy who's locked, who I know for certain is going to be the worst, a wide receiver 3, whereas the running back thins out so quickly. I'd rather take a guy that I'm certain is going to be like a top 30, probably top 24 receiver over an RB2 who could easily be an RB3 by like early October. So I'm just kind of opting for like positional certainty over a running back with a workload delineation that I just don't really know yet.
For me, I want to focus on stacking teammates in season long. We talked about DFS earlier, and that's something that we look at every single week in DFS, right? But it's a bit different because every single week we know what the matchups are going to be. It's kind of more of a given. I instead want to focus on redraft because I can't tell you how often I hear from people like, well, I want to diversify the players on my team.
The most asked question on Twitter.
Right?
I'm already starting this guy on this team, so obviously I can't start this other guy on this team, right?
Think about this. 2 years ago, if you had stacked in your draft Todd Gurley, Jared Goff, Robert Woods, championship. Last year, if you had stacked Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, championship. I want to get ahead of those breakthrough teams, right? Ones that we aren't sure that they're going to be that good, but have the potential to be, like the 49ers that we talked about, the Bucks potentially.
Cardinals, obviously. Yeah.
As teams that we can not focus on in rounds 1, 2, or 3, but like in 4, 5, 6, something like that, and have like the 3 core members of that team, and they just carry us throughout the entire season. Having multiple players on the same team, I think, is a very viable strategy that's not one that is attacked very often.
And it's not just for season long either. Like obviously DFS and best ball as well. Like you should be stacking offenses and taking the higher end of those points like every single week with those teams.
So we mentioned the Cardinals, we mentioned the Bucks, we mentioned the 49ers. Do any more come to mind, or any of those particularly stand out to you?
Steelers, a little bit maybe.
Yeah. It is hard to stack, but the Ravens are one of them as well.
Interesting. So maybe like a Lamar Jackson, Mark Ingram, and then would you go tight end of that?
So it's it's Mark Andrews likely.
Yeah.
I worry about Marquise Brown's injury. Chris Moore is going to play a factor in all of this, unfortunately.
Interesting.
But yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's hard to stack them, but it is the rushing offense.
I hear you.
It's going to be.
So at the very least, just Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram, and boom, that's just a lot of rushing totals each week.
I have something I want to comment on. So last year, I remember, Antonio Brown and Juju were going like a couple rounds apart, and there were a couple drafts where it's like, okay, I drafted Antonio. Juju, it might be the best wide receiver available, but they're on the same team. Will they cancel each other out? And I think that in today's pass-centric NFL that it's proven that there is more than enough volume to support 2 and sometimes even 3 pass catchers in an offense.
You can totally see that with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. You can see that with Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. Thanks a lot, guys. Hopefully that helped all of you out there. And for more preseason fantasy football coverage and to fill your needs, go and check out Rotoworld.com.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.